There's a young woman in Tennessee serving a 51-year prison sentence for murder. She was a child sex slave in 2004 when at the age of 16, she killed the man as she was sexually abusing her. She says it was self-defense. Brown was found guilty, sentenced to those 51 years in prison. A news report about her case has revived interest and unleashed tons of reaction on social media, including celebrities like Rihanna. The singer addressed the case in an Instagram post that ended with hashtag free Cyntoia Brown. Her case first received widespread attention in 2011 in a documentary by filmmaker Dan Hinman. And she talked about how the abuse she endured shaped her perception of the men in her life.
What did Johnny want from you?
Sex, for money. No. They all wanted acceptance and admiration. Hell yeah. That's what they wanted. My dad wanted to be admired because of the hard work he put in driving trucks and making that money and supplying us with the life that we lived. Cutthroat. He wanted to be admired by everyone else in the street because I remember that one time he said that I was going to work and get him this truck. It was a Suburban on some 26s. He wanted admiration. He wanted somebody to respect him. He wanted people to admire him. That's, oh my God. Then you got Johnny. What did he say? I want a woman to make love with me with desire. Remember I told you that part? Desire. He wants to be accepted.
Joining us from Skype from LA is Dan Berman, writer and director of the documentary Me Facing Life, Cyntoia's Story. Dan, how did you get turned on to this case?
I started working, I had a great interest in trying to figure out juvenile justice and trying to get my head around how juveniles can get involved in violence. When kids are expected to be innocent at a young age, how does this happen? So in about 2002, I started doing a lot of work and a lot of research into juvenile justice. And for one reason or another, I came in contact with a juvenile forensic psychiatrist at Vanderbilt University, and we started getting in touch. And with Dr. William Burnett, I gained access to the juvenile justice system in Nashville, so that within about a day after Cyntoia Brown was arrested, I received a call from her then attorney, her public defender, who said, "We think we've got a story you might want to tap into." I was on a plane that night, and the very next morning I was in with Cyntoia Brown 2 days after her arrest with a camera in my hand.
And the details of her case, how young was she when she initially became a sex slave?
Well, so sex trafficking and sex slave, these are terms these are new awareness terms. Back then, nobody was calling this sex slave, and nobody was calling this sex trafficking. She was in the middle of a nasty situation. She had been on the streets for a few weeks. She had been in and out of the streets for maybe a year prior, roughly. But for at least several weeks prior to this incident, she had been taken in with a guy whose name he went by Cutthroat. And Cutthroat was a pretty nasty guy. And he was abusing her sexually, and his friends were abusing her sexually, and she found herself in a situation for several weeks where her head couldn't be on straight. And he sent her out. It was time. He sent her out to go get some money, and he said, "This is what you're going to do." And she was afraid for her life, quite frankly.
And so tell folks what happened in terms of the trial, her shooting him in self-defense, and how the jury came to this decision.
You know, this is a really big question. You're asking perhaps the most fundamental question in the trial of Cyntoia Brown. She was tried in a superior court. And the Superior Court, she got the trial at the Superior Court because just prior, or a year and a half prior, she had been through a transfer hearing. A transfer hearing is when the juvenile court makes a decision whether a child should be tried as a juvenile or should be tried as an adult. And usually these days, and certainly in most states in America, we know this because we've done a lot of research, children who have committed a big crime are going to find themselves in the adult court because the juvenile court can't hold a child long enough. So she went into the Superior Court And the trial itself was, I don't have a good word for it. It was fascinating to watch. The process was fascinating to watch, but fascinating doesn't necessarily have a positive connotation, because what I was watching was a group of people who were trying their best to either defend or prosecute this young girl. And she's sitting there watching her life displayed out in front of a courtroom. What was missing from that entire trial was a problem that the Supreme Court sees and was getting ready to adjudicate, and we couldn't. In America, we couldn't. Certainly not in this court, not at this time. And the problem was, we're trying the facts of murder, but we're thinking in terms of an adult, but we're missing the fact that this is a child we're talking about. And children, as indicated by the Supreme Court, should be treated differently.
Dan, where can one go to either see the movie or learn more about the movie?
We're working on getting it posted again. It's been technically it's been offline. We're on our way. We're starting, and we never actually really stopped the documentary. The documentary that went out in 2011 was not an endpoint for us. This has been an ongoing problem, ongoing interest. We have been doing a big, huge body of research on juvenile justice in America. Cyntoia Brown's case is indicative of a much larger issue in this country, and we've continued documenting Cyntoia's case in the years since. We haven't stopped. So we took it offline just because we're moving into toward a new project, a new series that takes on juvenile sentencing. But we're working on trying to make it available. We're going to talk to Independent Lens, the organization that helped us get this on the air in the first place with public television. We're going to talk with Independent Lens and see if we might post it for a little while, or some way. Stay tuned, and we'll be happy to share that with everybody.
Mr. Berman, I was raised in Nashville, and Nashville prides itself on being kind of more liberal on issues of race. But I'm going to go back to this question of perception, this jury trial. How much of this is about black children being viewed as adults, no matter how old they are? I mean, you kind of addressed it, but I mean, if you want to get this case in front of a jury, but whether it's a jury or a judge or anything else, and we can change laws, some laws change in the wake of this, how much is this about the deeper, intractable issue of race and perception?
It's a good question, and I'm convinced that's in the fabric of all of this. Look, you have to consider that juvenile justice changed in the 1990s as we saw a surge of violence going on in America. So states, Tennessee, along with other states in this country, started tightening its laws because, quite frankly, what the court was saddled with, what society is saddled with, is fear. So Cyntoia Brown, whether she's white or black, or is certainly part of a mix of children who have scared the hell out of everybody. We're seeing at this time we're seeing a big insurgence of violence. Now, I can tell you that race. I'm not an expert to say that race really played a role in this. My observation is race does play a role. And I don't know that it's a conscious effort. I think it's something that plays in the minds of, we don't know how to think about children, period. Mm-hmm. Now throw in race as a possible add-on to this. I think it's possible. I'm just not an expert enough to tell you whether that's definitively the case.
So, Mr. Berman, there's actually some work that's been done by a person named Dr. Phil Goff that actually wrote an article called The Essence of Innocence that actually talks about this very issue, about how young people of color, black children in particular, are seen as older than they are and therefore are supposed to accept responsibility of adults. And so it seems like her case kind of fits into that. And then the other piece of this is that we have a juvenile justice system that is unforgiving and has gotten away from rehabilitation, and we see a lot of states moving towards raising the age, like New York, for example, raising the age for prosecution of children so that they won't be tried as adults. And so is the film going to be used in that way to connect it back to the advocacy that's going on across the country that gets us away from trying young people as adults?
You know, look, we made this film. I'll take responsibility. I made this film because I saw a real problem. And the layers of problems are pretty thick. I found a lot of people in Nashville who were trying to do the right thing. They were trying to get their heads around what's going on with this kid. Every part of the system, from the police who arrested her to through the court system. But the laws are so screwy, are so complicated. The laws are so complicated that it's not possible to come up with a way, a mechanism to really take into account what's going on with the child. I wanted this film to make noise. In 2011, I had hoped it was going to make the noise it's making right now. I'm real thankful that it is making the noise right now, because without this noise, how do we fix this? I think we have a lot of well-intentioned people in this country. I'm not as so glib to think that everybody is so polarized that it is entirely black and white. I think we do have a really, really large problem. We are afraid of kids who are violent. We don't know how to handle that, and states have shown this time and again. It is getting better, but it ain't fixed yet. And I hope this film is part of that. And I hope that the project that we're taking on to just kind of take a much larger look at the disparity of juvenile justice and juvenile sentencing in America, maybe we can stop being the most conservative country in the world, and we are.
All right, then.
Weekdays on TV One.
I will never lie to you.
Oh, my God.
Roland Martin.
He doesn't want to talk to us. He wants to ignore us.
Uncensored.
Hell no. That ain't gonna cut it, boo.
Unapologetic.
No, that is fundamentally false. You are wrong.
Unfiltered.
He wants an America where we all look alike. He ain't talking about black people.
Unrelenting.
You better go work out, because you got a fight on your hands.
NewsOne Now with Roland Martin. Weekdays at 7 a.m. on TV One.